Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing for the El Paso County Planning Commission. I'm Tom Bailey, the chair, and welcome to our only meeting in December, I think, which we're all happy about, I think. So my first order of business, as always, is to introduce and announce the voting members for today's hearing. We've got almost a full house today, and I'm going to go through the roll here. We'll have present and voting to my far right, Mr. Moraes. We have Mr. Byers. We have Mr. Whitney. We have Ms. Jack, Mr. Trowbridge, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Shipples, and Mr. Smith. And Mr. Markowicz will be here and available to participate, but unless one of us drops out, you don't get to vote today. But that's your prerogative. Thank you. And I am the chair. I will also be voting, so that's our full complement of 9 voting members today. And we'll move straight on to any comments from the planning department. Ms. Harrington.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Megan Harrington, Planning Director. I have no announcements today. The only item I may put on your radar for consideration is under the regular calendar, and I don't know if you've discussed this yet or not. On the regular items A and B, we do have people here in opposition for item B, which is the variance of use. Item A is the land development code, and so there is a consideration. If you choose to do so, you could take those out of order so that the folks are not waiting. Otherwise, I'd ask Mr. Kilgore if he had anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, very good. I was going to suggest that we do that, given the letters in our packet and the things that we've seen on agenda item 5B. So we'll move that up and just switch those when the time comes. Thank you. Next up, we have time on our agenda every time we meet to have public comment on items that are not on our agenda. Is there anyone here in the audience who would like to speak on an item that's not on our agenda today? And do we have anybody listening in online in the virtual world? Don't think so. Okay. We'll move on then to agenda item 3, our consent items. 3A is the adoption of minutes from the hearing that we held last time on November 21st. As you know, we're kind of evolving the process of writing those minutes, and we'll discuss that at the end of our session today. But everybody had a chance to look at this latest iteration of the minutes. Are there any questions or comments or discussion about those specific minutes? And we'll take the broader question at the end of today. Okay. Seeing none, we'll deem the minutes for the November 21st hearing adopted as presented and move on to item 3B, file number PUD-SP 243. This is a planned unit development and preliminary plan for urban landing. Is there anyone in the audience other than the applicant who's here for that item? Yes, we do have a couple. Commissioners, do we have any questions or discussion for staff? Let me just get a sense of those 3 or 4 of you that have said you're here. Are you here in opposition to that application? One is, Possibly not. Okay, let's move that then, and kind of consider that a little. We'll do a little abbreviated version of a regular item here so we can get the public comment on those into the record for our consideration. So let me find my notes here. So we'll essentially move on then to the regular items here and or called up consent item. What I was looking for, is that yours, Mr. Hauser? What I guess I'd like then is just give us kind of a brief rundown, and then we'll open it up to get an idea of what the public interest is in this, so that we can consider that.
Okay, thank you. So for the record, my name is Ryan Hauser. I'm the planner with El Paso County. I was the project manager for this project, the PUD-SP 243, for the combined PUD map amendment, rezone, and preliminary plan for urban landing. Representing Department of Public Works for engineering, we have Daniel Torres. To those who may be watching remotely, if you'd like to speak on this item, please provide a name and reliable phone number to pcdhearings@elpasoco.com. So what I would like to do, if the chair is agreeable to this, is I'll run through the entire presentation and then kind of standard like we would normally do. I know you had said abbreviated, but okay. Thank you. So for the record, this is a map amendment rezone of 6.5 acres from R4 to PUD. So for the record and for the folks in the audience, R4 is a very similar type of zoning district to a PUD. It's actually, we've considered it the old version of a PUD. So for argument's sake, you could almost consider this a lateral zone amendment from what is essentially a PUD type of zoning district to the new modern standard for a PUD. PUD is essentially a customized zoning district that is tailor-made to the specific proposal, as opposed to what we would refer to as conventional zoning. I don't want to go into too gross of details with the nuances of zoning, but a couple of points that I would like to make on this specific request. On this table that you can see on the screen is a comparison of the existing zoning to the proposed zoning. So you can see a lot more regulations are in place with the proposed zoning, and a lot more setback requirements, dimensional standard requirements that were not originally done when the property was originally zoned in, I believe, 1976, when the original R4 zoning district was established. The density that's being proposed today is roughly the same. The potential maximum development for this property, 49 residential units. The previous R4 zoning also contemplated multifamily and single-family attached for this property. The current proposal contemplates a single-family detached product with no multifamily, no multi-story apartments or anything of that nature, which would be allowed under the existing zoning. With regards to the master plan, this property is located in the suburban residential place type, which would support the proposal. It would also be supportive of apartments or things of that nature as well, just to state for the record. It's also located within the buffer area for the military place type, the Tri-Lakes Key area, and the minimal change developed area of change. So essentially what that means is, for the Tri-Lakes Key area, the idea is that the proposed development should be somewhat consistent or in line. I hesitate to use the word consistent, since that would imply that it's identical, but somewhat in line with the type of development that we would normally come to expect in the Monument or Tri-Lakes area. And then that's also reflected in the minimal change developed area of change, which implies that this is more or less a fully developed area with small pockets of undeveloped land that could potentially develop in a manner similar to what we would normally see in this area. And based on staff's analysis of the master plan, we found that the proposal is generally consistent with the place type, the key area, and the area of change. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Daniel to discuss the drainage and transportation components.
Good morning, Commissioners. Daniel Torres with Engineering. In terms of drainage, the subdivision is located within the Jackson Creek Drainage Basin. Fees will be due at time of plat recordation. Stormwater runoff is being conveyed to a proposed private full spectrum detention pond. And per the submitted preliminary drainage report, the Urban Landing Homeowners Association will provide maintenance for that pond and the private storm sewer system throughout the project. Any questions in terms of drainage?
No, thank you.
Thank you. In terms of transportation, access will be provided by 2 new roadways intersecting Spanish Bit Drive. The proposed roadways within the subdivision are indicated as privately owned and maintained roadways. Traffic study was submitted that identified offsite improvements consisting of auxiliary turn lanes and improvements to Spanish Bit Drive to a urban cross-section. The subdivision to the north will also be doing their share of improvements to Spanish Bit Drive on the north side of that roadway. The development is subject to the El Paso County Road Impact Fee Program. There was concerns from a gentleman that I spoke to in regards to the traffic along Spanish Bit Drive. Most of this traffic is identified going to the west to Struthers Road. They had concerns about traffic going to the east through that neighborhood. In discussions with the traffic engineer, as this traffic study is still in review, we're still working out some minor comments. The impacts for any traffic going to the east would not impact the capacity of those rural local roadways within that subdivision. Any questions for traffic?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So our department had notified the 38 adjoining property owners on November 20th for the 2 hearings. And as you've noted, there are several folks in attendance that would like to speak on this item. We do have applicant representation here. So if you would like, I can turn it over to the applicant to give their presentation. And then I did also want to say before we did that, I know I kind of ran through the slides very quickly. I do have a few slides if we need to pull them up that outline the review criteria for a PUD and a preliminary plan, if those need to be shown.
Yeah, we'll look at those at the end when we're finished. I think what I'd like to do is ask the applicant maybe if we can hear briefly from the folks who are here with some concerns or questions, and then the applicant can come up and address those at the end. That looks okay. I think we have that. We got the thumbs up from the back. So let's do that. If you are going to speak on this or any item, we need to make sure that you've signed in so for the record we can have your correct name and everything there. And when you come up, come to the microphone, speak into the microphone, identify yourself, and we'll give you a couple minutes to explain what your issues are, what your concerns are, and then we'll have the applicant come up. It's a little out of order of how we normally do things, but we want to make sure that you have an opportunity and we understand what it is that you're concerned about. So go ahead in whatever order you want. I think I saw 3, maybe 4 hands of people who would like to speak. Come on forward and again, just make sure at some point you get signed in there, and we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Doug Chanel. We're adjacent property owners on the north side of Spanish Bit. Not opposed to this development at all. Elite Properties builds great stuff. What we are concerned about is the interface between the landowner, the county, and the developer, making sure those cracks get filled. Over the years, we've started receiving considerably more stormwater runoff coming down the north side of Spanish Bit, carrying sediment because of hard surface placed above us. The county, of course, we are gravel roads, so there's no provision for stormwater runoff. That runoff runs on east towards Struthers Loop, and it's not being accounted for. There's no detention ponds or anything. So that sediment's going to continue going west onto the new paved and curbed road. Second, we're gravel roads. We're not all-season roads by any means. You move young people into this property style, the most direct route to the grade school and the junior high school is through our non-all-season roads. Just past that property to the east, it drifts in, the county doesn't plow it, and we end up with 5 or 6 stuck cars in that drift just east of where you're proposing to pave and curb. And then we wait for 3 or 4 days for the county to come by because we're not all-season roads to plow. And then lastly, we experience Spanish Bit going west to get on Struthers every day. There's no turn lane at all. We top a hill to turn east. There's no turn lane at all. So you hope the people behind you are following your turn signals and slowing down behind you. There's no acceleration lane going south to get into. So we deal with traffic going 50 and 60 mile an hour and trying to cross both lanes and go each direction, north or south. We have a hill from the south and we have a curve and high speeds as to try and go south on that road. So even a little bit more traffic is going to be a public safety issue in the future. There's nothing to slow anybody down going south. And northbound is a hill that everybody's topping that we're trying to see through. So just making sure that the county, I'm all for the interface and I have no issues with development and things like that, but I want to make sure that things don't fall through the crack and it gets paved over and it's all good. You know, you just need to understand those things that seem to fall through the crack. All right.
No, thank you for your comments. And yeah, we hear those things, kinds of things all the time. Traffic around the development that's not necessarily part of the development, and schools and runoff. Very, very common comments. And I happen to live up there. I'm pretty close to that. I do Struthers a couple times a day. Understand what we're talking about. Next up, please. And if your comments are the same, don't feel obligated to come up. If we've addressed the issues that you're concerned about, we'll let the applicant have a chance to address those next.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Steve Siri. I want to comment, first of all, on the wonderful digs you folks have. I left this commission 12 years ago as chairman, and I'll tell you, it was nothing like this. So, well done. I'm also happen to be the only person on the Architectural Control Committee for what it is in Chaparral Hills, which is the subdivision adjacent. I will not repeat what Doug just covered, but one thing, in talking about the school traffic, I know there's 2 ways to get to the school. One is to go east on Spanish Bit to Struthers Loop, and then Lariat Drive to the school. All all of that until you get to the end of Lariat, or the end of the Lariat, is gravel. It's gravel in the good weather and dust, and in the bad weather, because it has mag chloride on it, it is extremely slippery. In fact, there's a hill east just before Lariat that I have seen cars slide off the side because it is so slippery. So the option then is to go north on Struthers, east on Baptist, and then, I'm not sure what, maybe it's Glen Eagle that they would turn right on to get to Antelope Trail. It is a longer route, but in the really bad weather, it's probably the better route. The school buses take the route through the Chaparral Hill subdivision, so I'm sure that that's a way most of those folks would go. Just expanding on the turn lane issue, it would seem, and maybe it's included, but I could not find it. A right turn onto Struthers Road from Spanish Pit will require an acceleration lane just to get into the traffic. A left turn onto Struthers Road will require also an acceleration lane heading south. And that is something that needs to be done with this subdivision, not wait for the Cathedral Commons to develop and add more. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siri.
This where you sign in?
Yes, please. While we're filling some time, I'll add the comment that it would be nice if people who drove on Struthers actually followed the speed limit, the posted speed limit signs, instead of racing up and down Struthers Speedway. It would be nice, but like many places in the county, it just doesn't happen, sadly. Go ahead, sir.
So good morning. Thanks very much for this opportunity to come to tell me what's on your mind. My name is Paul Kraus, and this really affects me very directly. I am the house right next to the property on 795 Spanish Pit Drive. So I have an abundance of concerns, all right? So begin with, I am going to reiterate some of the things the other gentlemen have mentioned as far as the traffic. And it's not just the cars in and out of there and the mess that is in the rainy season or snow season. There aren't too many seasons where it's not an issue. The foot traffic that's going to come in there, it's a nice place to walk, I get it. Which brings up kind of one of the first things is, I think it's great that people get out and walk, but I don't want them walking on my property, right? Everybody has their own space, we like to stay in it, don't want people in our space unless they're invited, right? So one of the things I'd like to see, if it's not already in the plan, right, is some kind of wall. Just as there is a wall between Big R, right, and Mr. Chanel's property, I really need a wall, all right? I don't need their dogs coming over to my property and leaving their little prizes, right? For my dogs to get into, for my kids to get into, those kinds of things. I have chickens out there, I have bees out there. I don't need their dogs coming over my property causing problems with me and my lifestyle. So that's one thing right there that's really important. I think a wall that matches the one that's between the other properties would be very nice, okay? So that's one thing. So the second thing is I do 100% oppose to the size of this development that's going to be in there. Something's going to go there sooner or later. I get that. Writing's on the wall, okay? And my objective is to mitigate maybe the size of what it is to help mitigate some of the traffic that comes through. Not everything has to be built to the hilt, right? Okay, so people need homes. I get it. That's a good thing. Get people places that they can afford that kind of stuff. But it also is not really congruent to what's there now. There's Big R, low profile. All the other houses in the community are low profile. The houses to the south of me and that neighborhood there, they're single family homes, right? The next nearest thing to anything really large is north up there near McDonald's on Baptist Road. And that pretty much fits in there really well. But the people that are living in this area, you know, we know there's the risk, but nobody was really bargaining for this massive project, that height. I tell you what, I did not spend 28 years in the military so I could come home every night to this massive light show of a housing area just tearing up the skyline. It's a really beautiful skyline. If anybody's taking the time, come sit in my driveway one day at night and check out the skyline. It's incredible. And all those lights, right, all the lights for every season of the year are just going to really tear that up, especially when it's that tall. Do we need something there? Sure. Doesn't necessarily need to be that big. I'm not in favor of that. So the other things, so I'm not sure how the rules work on this or what the laws are exactly, of course, right? So that's why I want to bring it up. The easement to the telephone poles that run in between the two properties, that's my property line is right on the easement. I imagine if a pole goes down in a windstorm or pole needs to be replaced, big truck's going to come in there. Hopefully there's some kind of plan to share that easement, because if a truck those size have to come on my property and do any kind of turning around, they're going to drive right over my septic system. My leach field goes out that side. You guys can drive by, you'll see how green the grass is, right? It's out that way. So I have concerns with adequate access to the easement. My responsibility, it's a shared responsibility for the electricity out that way. I have 2 young daughters learning how to drive, right? And that traffic, like you said, Mr. Bailey, it's coming fast from both directions. And there's days, shoot, I'm 63 years old. I'm like, okay, when do I get to go? And I know what I'm doing, right? And so getting 2 young daughters to learn how to drive out there, I think there needs to be a light there. It'll definitely slow the traffic down, because no matter what you build out there, they're not going to drive any slower. Folks that live out that way or just use that road, we know that. So now we're going to have more cars driving faster, getting in and out of there. So those are some of my main concerns of, I hope are addressed. And again, the biggest thing for me is I'm not interested in something that's that size or that tall.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus.
All right.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Kevin Beechwood. I hope everyone's having a good week. I have a few notes. My family goes back in El Paso County for over 100 years. We're also part of the original community members of Chaparral Hills. So Chaparral Hills is a horse community. Some of you may have been up there, some of you may not. It's kind of a hidden community, but there's over 50 lots that value at over $1 million a piece with $1 million houses. So you have to understand that Spanish Bit and Struthers Loop is a dirt road. It turns to mud and people cut through. Mr. Bailey, if you've been up there, you understand what that turns into during the winter. I pull people out who are stuck in the snow, and it happens continuously. So the city does maintain that road by sending trucks through, but still, everyone who goes through, it just turns into a mess. So that is 50 houses, roughly, 50 lots. They're 5-acre lots, and they're sometimes split into 2.5-acre lots. But it's a pristine neighborhood, right? It's a jewel of northern Colorado Springs. Now you want to take what is a normal size lot for Chaparral Hills, which is right at the border, and you want to put 50 units there. That's basically the size of this whole neighborhood. And that's, in my mind and lots of my neighbors' minds, absolutely ridiculous and unthought of. The development that you all have been approving in northern Colorado Springs has been hyper-paced, and this looks to be just a cash grab by the developers. Yes, something is going to be developed, but nonetheless, putting 50 units and essentially building a trailer park at the end of the road is nothing that
is going to be good. I mean, you can put Classic Homes' name on it. At the end of the day, they're going to be like tiny homes, right? So then you put 50 people and 50 households that are going to start walking the loop. It's a closed loop, right? And all these neighbors are paying a ton in taxes to support Colorado Springs. So I hope you can hear that. The next one is that 34 surrounding neighbors were only notified. Nothing went out to the neighborhood that actually is going to be affected, which is the Chaparral Hills community. So if you look at who submitted, it's basically the neighborhood behind Chaparral Hills, which is just another closed exit, which goes into closer development. Hardly anybody has been notified in Chaparral Hills. So that is for only 34 neighbors to be notified and only 3 to be here is ridiculous, right? So that needs to be addressed. Approval is, I mean, yes, something's going to be developed, but that should be like 3 or 4 houses, right? Like to put 50 units on what is just one lot size is silly. Next one is the El Paso County can't even replace a stop sign that has been missing at the Big R area. So how can we trust that the community in El Paso County will actually follow through on doing things here? This has been in development. Everybody communicated with a few of the community members of Chaparral Hills about building multi-story apartment houses, but that seems to be changed. But nonetheless, USAFA does have concerns about this and the water drainage, and so please address USAFA's concerns as well. So I would hope that corruption in the approval processes of the northern Colorado Springs community is not prevalent in our El Paso County government. That's basically what I have. I mean, I feel more neighbors should be notified, and there is a church that's going up right behind it, but at the end of the day, this is a dirt road and everyone's going to just come through the road and chew it up, and also they're going to walk their dogs right through the closed loop, and it's just going to change everything of our $1 million+ houses. So thank you for your time and attention, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Well, thank you. Despite the unfounded allegations, we do appreciate hearing from the public, even if they have a little twisted view of the way things work around here. Anyone else like to speak on this item? I don't see anyone. So we've given you a lot of an opportunity to express a lot of things, and I'll just interject here that the vast majority of those have nothing to do with the approval criteria here and are mostly things that are not the responsibility of the property owner, the applicant. But we will let the applicant address those concerns and talk about their specific application, which is what we're here to address. Unfortunately, we don't get to control traffic or things like that, growth in the neighborhoods, or plowing or replacing street signs. That's not our job here. Our job is to let property owners apply and ask to do things with the property that they own. And this property owner has a plan and would like to do something with it. And so we'll hear from the applicant now.
Good morning, Planning Commissioners. My name is Brooks Swenson. I'm with NES. Based on the comments we heard, I think I'll just quickly go through our presentation and touch on some of the concerns that we heard. Let's get this set up here. I'll skip through some of these, but I wanted to show this is the approved plot plan and zoning from the 1976. This is the Jackson Creek Junction plot plan. And our site is highlighted in red here, and this allowed for a medium-density multifamily at a density of 7.5 dwelling units per acre. As someone mentioned, there was an application back in 2021 for rezone to RM30, which was for an apartment project. And at that time, the neighborhood came out in opposition and said that they would rather see a density that's been approved with the existing R4 zoning. So this is the proposed site plan here. As you can see, these are smaller lots. They range in size from 2,500 square feet to a little over 3,300 square feet. It's kind of like an alley-loaded product, but very low profile in response to one of the neighbors' concerns. These are not big gargantuan houses. They are really an attainable option for people. We're just under 7.5 dwelling units per acre, and each home would have 2 parking spaces available, either in a form of a garage or just 2 parking spaces. Additionally, there are 22 guest parking spaces scattered throughout to provide additional parking for guests. We've got a lot of nice community open space proposed. That's one of the benefits of a PUD, is you can cluster the development and allow for shared open space and community space, which is really nice. This is it's a great option for first-time home buyers, but also buyers who are looking to downsize and just simplify, not have the yard maintenance. So I wanted to show, these are the proposed building elevations. So they are nice, small size houses. I know that there was a comment about schools and additional students needing to go through the existing neighborhood to get to the school. With this being just 49 lots, and most of these are 1 and maybe 2 bedroom, it may not be a big driver of a lot of additional students to the school. And just touching back on that comment about the traffic cutting through the existing neighborhood, I think it's much more convenient to go onto Struthers and then to Higbee Road. So we can look at that on the map, but let me just pan through the rest of these proposed elevations. And these would be, clustered together a little bit more. So you're kind of seeing them freestanding. They would be a little closer together, almost like a townhome that's split apart. So I just want to touch back on to our conformance with the El Paso County Master Plan. Again, we're in the suburban residential place type, so that's shown there in the yellow color. That's what our site is within that area. And the proposed development maintains the form of a single-family detached residential neighborhood while providing a density transition to the adjacent retail and service uses. So yes, it is higher in density than the Struthers Ranch single-family development, but it does provide a nice transition to the existing and proposed commercial zone to the north. This is in the Tri-Lakes area, as Ryan mentioned, and this project would provide medium-density housing option adjacent to commercial uses, which is consistent with the character of the Tri-Lakes area. Would also be a great option for someone who's commuting to Denver or to the Springs. This is in the area of minimal change developed, while this designation recognizes pockets of undeveloped areas and points out high likelihood of intense future infill development. This project meets many of the goals of the master plan, ensuring compatibility with established character and infrastructure capacity. It's well served by the infrastructure on Struthers Road. It also encourages a range of development types to support a variety of land uses. And the development is consistent with the allowable land uses set forth in the place types plan for the county. I won't go through all of this, but as I mentioned, this it provides a mix of housing types. This is a housing type that we don't see a lot of, and it's nice for people who are trying to age in place. I think that's one of the goals of the master plan, is to be able to have an option to move down and, you know, simplify your lifestyle. And also with the HOA would maintain a lot of the common amenities. So let me just get back to some of the comments we heard, and I want to talk a little bit more about the compatibility. So you can see here, this the site is located between existing and proposed commercial. So the buildings we show in white are approved plans for the church, and then the undeveloped commercial lots in the CC zone to the north. There's the Big R that's existing. There's a Rocky Mountain Cycle Plaza, which is like a power sports retail store just south of the church there. So it does abut a portion of the Struthers Ranch PUD, but as I mentioned, it offers a nice transition and density to these commercial uses. Regarding the Chaparral Hills development to the east, Mr. Kraus did come to our neighborhood meeting we had, and he, you know, he voiced his concerns, and we are proposing a concrete fence along that property line to help give him some privacy and ensure that people aren't walking onto his yard. And you know, of course, that's not going to be allowed. You know, and then there was also, he also mentioned that he keeps bees, and so we've proposed a lot of wildflowers that along that edge that would support his bee and honey production. And then regarding his concerns about the power line, there is a power line running along his side of the property, but that easement is wholly on his side of the property, and so this really wouldn't affect that. Let me go back to regarding the concerns about the drainage, all of our off-site flows will be directed to a detention pond at the southwest portion of the site here. And they would also accept some of those off-site flows and accommodate for those as well. I wanted to look briefly at this slide too about the larger compatibility. And so this shows our site in a little bit broader context. And I wanted to show that the RR 2.5 neighborhood is kind of an anomaly compared to everything else that's around it. I mean, this is what we're proposing is consistent with what's shown in pink is all PUD or R4, which is the equivalent of PUD. So we're really consistent with what's existing and proposed, and most of the traffic would be, as I mentioned, would go onto Struthers and then to Higbee. They really wouldn't have any benefit of going through the neighborhood. I think that's less convenient. Also on the traffic, there are proposed improvements in the traffic study on Table 8. and the developer would be responsible for contributing to the a westbound right turn lane and a westbound left turn lane onto Struthers Road. So it would improve some of those existing concerns issues that people had concerns about. Let me just make sure I covered everything that people had questions about.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Carlson?
while you're looking that up, sir, there was a concern about the height of buildings, and I didn't see anything more than about 2 stories there in those pictures you showed. How tall are those renderings you showed us?
I don't know exactly, but they're less than 30 feet. They're 2 stories. Let me go back to some of those elevations. So a lot of them have just a main living area on the main floor, and then the upper floor is more of just like a little storage loft. So that would be the case in some of these. And then some do have a second story with an additional bedroom up there or a little living area up there. But none of them are, you see a lot of these that are like 3 stories tall. They're all just under 2 stories, 2 stories.
What's a typical story of a residential? How high is that? 10 feet?
Yeah, 10 or 12 feet, I think, yeah.
Thanks.
The limit on the PUD zone is 30 feet maximum height.
Correct,
Structure
yes.
height, right.
Yes, sir. I think that covers everything that people had questions about. But
Okay,
Does anyone
thank you.
else
Any
have
questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I'll just go through,
Moraes?
I'll go through my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just reiterate that you said table 8 in the traffic study talked about the west turn lane and right turn lane fixes or development. Can you just kind of point out what you're talking about on this chart?
I don't have the chart
Okay.
in the presentation, but it,
Maybe Andrea has.
yeah, maybe we can pull it up. Oh, it's wait up.
Just that that was a concern and you just kind of glossed over. I just want to.
Mr. Chair. I can, Andrea Barlow with NES, I can just quickly go through them. Go ahead. Do you have a?
I was just going to alert Mr. Moraes it's on page 7 of the, or page 28, excuse me, of the packet.
The packet.
It's in their letter of intent.
Yeah, I was looking.
Maybe
at
that's what Ms. Barlow is going to address.
So there are a number of proposed improvements. Some of them are responsibility purely of this development, Urban Landing, and some of them are combined improvements with the Cathedral Rocks Commons commercial development to the north. And the applicant is currently in discussions with them about the timing of those improvements. But there is a proposal to construct a northbound right turn lane on Struthers Road at Spanish Bit Drive. So go north, a right turn lane. Lengthen the southbound left turn lane on Struthers at Spanish Bit. So that's on this, that's over there, yeah. So lengthening that turn lane. And then on Spanish Bit, obviously paving Spanish Bit because everybody's saying it's a dirt road. So we're going to pave it to the eastern edge of the property line. That's on us. Install curb and gutter and sidewalk along the north side of Spanish Bit. And install curb and gutter on the south side. And then regarding the actual turns, construct westbound right turn lane on Spanish Bit Drive at Struthers and construct westbound left turn lane on Spanish Bit Drive at Struthers going to the south. So there was a comment about the need for an acceleration lane on Struthers, but that hasn't been identified as a required improvement given the volume of traffic.
Thank you. That works. And I think, let me ask this question. It might be more for our engineering team. Would there be any effect of making, was it Innovative Drive and Urban Landing Drive, just signage to make it left turn only out of there to kind of prevent or try to prevent? I mean, any signage, speed limit 55 is a sign, but nobody follows it. Same thing, making left turns out of the development to kind of force people to kind of go to Struthers versus going through the dirt road. I think going from asphalt to dirt in and of itself will tell people, hey, it's not smart to go onto the dirt roads, right? I think just in general, and once they get stuck there once, and once they go through the mud, they'll probably stop doing it. But would signage there to kind of left turn out of that development so they don't go through the dirt roads be of any use? Do you think? I mean, just in your opinion.
Annual tours with engineering. By Innovative Drive, I'm assuming you mean one of the developments.
Yeah, the development, the two roads out of the development.
Not necessarily. These are full movement intersections. They meet the intersection criteria. So there would be no reason to necessarily limit them. I think, like you said, people prefer to drive on paved roadways, especially as one of the concerned citizens indicated during this time of year. It's not as safe to go on some of those rural roadways, but they meet our criteria, so we don't see any reason to provide any limitations.
Okay.
And as a county road, we can't really prohibit people from using Spanish Bit or Struthers Loop, right?
Correct.
Yeah, no, I get that. It was sort of trying to.
No, yeah, a sign's an easy solution.
Right.
If it's a solution. It's
And
an
I-
easy symbol.
Yeah, and I think the end of the asphalt is a good sign also that, hey, it's probably better to stay on the asphalt than to go onto the dirt roads.
Correct.
Myself. Okay. I'm just trying to think if there is anything else. I don't think anything, Daniel, I don't think anything for you. I might have a question for the staff at the end.
I have a question regarding the turns too.
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
In our packet, the northbound right turn lane timing is when warranted,
Correct.
and the right turn lane is when 95th percentile queuing exceeds existing lane length. I don't live there, but if I did, I wouldn't find those terms real encouraging in terms of what's going to happen when. Can you explain so it would be a little more comforting?
And at this stage, well, this is the preliminary plan stage. At the final plat is where we will nail that down more accordingly. And as the applicant indicated, they're in talks with the Cathedral Rock Commons subdivision. They're a little bit more ahead as that is an approved subdivision. So it also depends on those commercial lots developing. And as those come in for development, that's where most of that will be triggered.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. Any other questions for the applicant or staff?
Just a staff question, I guess more for Ryan. One of the citizens talked about USAFA's concerns. What feedback have you gotten back from the academy?
Actually might have to turn that one over to Daniel.
Oh, sorry.
I believe the majority of their concerns are related to drainage.
Okay.
That question?
Yeah, just one of the citizens talked about USAFA's concerns. I have it in my notes, and I just wondering what feedback you've gotten back from the academy.
I believe some of their concerns were a lot of this flow from the Cathedral Rock Commons and as well as this development as it goes to the west beneath Struthers Road. At this stage, this project is just at a preliminary design stage. They identified that they are providing their full spectrum detention pond to mitigate their development's flows, and those flows would go into that existing culvert, which would be considered a suitable outfall. They would still have to analyze the hydraulics, make sure that it is still capable of accepting those flows, but we won't see that until the final drainage report.
And the overall concept is the flow that comes off the lot now would be the same, engineered to be the same historically.
Yes, they would have
that would come out in the future.
Historic flows.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may add to that as well, just to state for the record, we do have an extra condition of approval on this application that any outstanding comments will need to be addressed before the PUD plan can be recorded. So we are still working on the coordination and making sure that the USAFA comments and the other staff comments that we're still working on can get addressed before the plan is formally recorded.
Gotcha. And then the last comment about the notification process, we did the standard 500-foot notification. And just to let the citizens know, it used to be just properties that touched this property, which if you count them, it would have just been 8 people or 8 property owners notified. About a year and a half ago, I guess we said, hey, that wasn't enough. And so we pushed that out to anybody within a 500-foot radius of an edge of its properties get notified. So, I mean, you can't just do everybody in El Paso County for a development. So that's where really neighbors need to kind of get together and start talking about it once they get the notification if they think it's a process or a problem. So that's all my questions and comments, and I'll leave it at
And
that.
on top of that, and signs are posted there, so if you go by, you can see it, but we can only follow the rules. We have done a good job, I believe, of expanding our reach over the last year and a half or so. So I think we have done a better job of informing folks when things like this are coming down. Are there any other questions for staff? Any discussion here among the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on file number. The public comment portion is closed. We're deliberating now, and
Disingenuous, not true.
so- well,
Mr.
this is
Bailey,
this is a very bad precedent that I will not set.
Mr. Bailey,
Mr. Murray.
I would say if he has comments, there's always the Board of County Commissioners meeting to bring up. You've heard the applicant's rebuttal, his presentation, his rebuttal to the comments. I would say at this point, you can kind of, when the Board of County Commissioners meet, you know what his statements are, and you can bring them up at that point. That's the time to, where really the decision makers are. All we are is a recommendation body.
Yeah, and the applicant is here. You can always address your questions and concerns to them. If you have a question with the process, if you feel that we're not doing our job here, again, we all serve at the pleasure of the county commissioners, and they will make the final decision on this possibly based on our recommendation. Sometimes they listen to our recommendations, not always, but sometimes they do. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on agenda item 3B, PUDSP 243, the planned unit development and preliminary plan for urban land.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Thank you. As regards agenda item 3B, file number PUD-SP 243, Plan Unit Development and Preliminary Plan for Urban Landing, I move that we recommend approval in accordance with the attached resolution with 7 conditions, 5 notations, and a finding of sufficiency for water, finding of sufficiency with regard to water quality, quantity, and dependability, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Trowbridge.
Second.
I hear a second from Mr. Smith. Thank you. Any last discussion?
The only other thing I'll mention is, if you look at it big picture, it was already zoned something that was very similar to what they're zoning. It's really, they're going from an obsolete zoning to what we currently use. So if they use that obsolete zoning, which they could have, it would be very similar to what was going on right now. But at least we had an opportunity to put some things in there that the citizens are concerned about. So that's all I want to say.
No, I agree. Mr. Whitney.
I was just going to add to that, that with considerably more conditions and restrictions and whatnot in this go-around than was the case with R4 with the same density. So there's a better chance to get it the way people want it.
Mr. Chair.
And with an existing, the R4 and the existing plan that we had in there is what, 50 years old? Something like that. It's been around for a while. It's not a surprise to anyone. Sorry, I heard somebody. Mr. Smith.
Would it be prudent to put up the decision criteria so everybody can see how we make our decision?
I think it's in the packet and we all know it, that this was a consent item.
They don't know it.
Well, we'll make sure that Mr. Hauser gets that to the people, the public. They can always go into EDARP and see what it is. They can see these presentations. And we're going to take a break here in a minute, and I'm going to stand around, and if somebody walks up to the desk and wants to talk to me, they can do that during the break. Mr. Trowbridge.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Mr. Moraes has said. I mean, I think this does fit this area. It's on an edge. It could very well, I could see this very well have been gone commercial given the commercial uses that are in that area. So I think, we need the housing. I think this does fit. It wouldn't be compatible if you tried to drop it in the middle of Chaparral, but I think it is a nice fit with this area.
And with the multifamily, significant multifamily development you have just at Struthers and Baptist Road, not very far north of this, this fits in, and I think the applicant's done a good job of keeping the product such that it is even more compatible with the existing residential. So, anything else? Anyone else like to add anything? Okay. Then I will call the roll. I'll start at my left with Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Shipples,
Aye.
Mr. Carlson,
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge,
Aye.
Ms. Jack,
Aye.
Mr. Whitney,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Moraes.
Aye.
And the chair also votes aye. We will recommend this be approved, and that recommendation will go to the Board of County Commissioners, who will hear this item on the 17th of this month. And so that will be when the final decision will be made. We're going to take a break. Let's give us 10 minutes, come back, and then when we return, we will take item 5B and 5A out of order. We'll start with the file number VA 244, the variance of use for Utah Nevada Lane, when we come back in 10 minutes. And I guess while I'm stalling, we'll come back to order and we will hear from Mr. Kilgore. Since we haven't heard from you presenting an item, we've decided that we'll give you the new planner treatment and make sure that you can address some really hard questions and get you up to the standard of the planners that we're used to seeing here.
Oh, no, sir. You missed the last one. It was a very, very long presentation. So,
Oh, okay. So it's just me that will give you the. Yeah, and the first rule is faster and funnier. So,
yes, sir.
Okay,
Well,
go ahead.
well, in that case, sir, I would like to say I'm happy you're all here today. You have the privilege of listening to both the planning manager and the director present today. So congratulations to you all.
We'll take it as an early Christmas present. Thank you.
So the case before you is Utah Nevada Lane variance of use. Oop, pardon me. I actually went too fast. There you go. The planner on this was Mr. Scott Weeks, and the engineer was Mr. Daniel Torres. If you're watching remotely, wish to participate, and have not provided a name and reliable phone number, if you would, please email that information to pcdhearings@elpasoco.com. The request is to allow a recreational vehicle storage and mini warehouse facility. This is in the RR5, and it has a commercial airport overlay on this property. It's located south of Woodman Road on Adventure Way and south of the intersection of Adventure Way and Nevada Lane. It is adjacent to both the City of Colorado Springs as well as County A5 and RR5 zone properties. Before you is the criteria of approval. Some background for this property. The three parcels combined are 16.22 acres. They were created prior to platting requirements and are considered a legal division of land. The home and storage shed were built in 1969. Variance of use was approved in 2008 for a contractor's equipment yard. Variance of use was also approved in 2018 for outdoor storage of materials on one of the other properties included. An existing single-family home was built in 1950. This variance of use would supersede all the other variance of uses for this property. It's required because an automobile and boat storage yard, mini warehouse facility, they're not permitted uses within RR5. There is no expiration date proposed for this variance of use, and the approval will run with the land. Here are the dimensional standards for the RR5 zoning district, and the applicant will be required to submit and receive approval of a site development plan through the department. Master plan place type is urban residential. Primary uses single-family residential, multifamily residential, mixed use, commercial retail and service, institutional parks and office. This variance of use does support some of the commercial points in this place type. The area of change in the master plan is new development. And if you don't mind, I'll ask Mr. Torres to come up for the drainage and transportation portions, please.
Daniel Torres with engineering. In terms of drainage, property is in the Sand Creek Drainage Basin. Fees are not assessed with variance of use applications, nor they would be assessed with the site development application that is to come, should this get approved. Grading and erosion control plan as well as a drainage report will be required with that site development plan. At this stage, we do not get or require a drainage report. So that's all going to be looked into in the subsequent stage of the development. In terms of transportation, driveway access is provided via the current Nevada lane with this intersection with Adventure Way. Adventure Way is a city-owned and maintained roadway. Nevada Lane is intended to be gated, limiting the access to California Drive, which is on the south of this. If I could go back, this would be a better aerial. California Drive is on the south side of the development over here, which is also a private roadway. Access to California Drive would still be provided via adjacent private roadways. Documentation was provided by the applicant regarding the right of ownership for Nevada Lane. Staff did consult with the county attorney. Staff did not find any grants of right-of-way to the public or deed other than a parcel to the south, which they are accommodating. Staff didn't have sufficient information to take a position as to whether this is a public road or private that could be gated.
Okay, Mr. Trowbridge?
Yeah, so you just kind of touching on it. So Adventure Way is City of Colorado Springs.
City of Colorado Springs.
But Nevada, California, and Utah are all private roads as far as you can tell?
Correct.
And who was responsible for maintaining those? Or can you find anything on that?
Did not. And so as far as Nevada Lane, whether that is open for public use, we couldn't, county attorneys indicated that they did not have sufficient information to state whether this would be available for public use. And I could defer to county attorney and make sure I'm not saying anything different. Yeah.
But, and that goes to the documentation provided. Basically, there is evidence that the existing Nevada Lane is private. And so anybody that used that in the past was, to be extreme, trespassing on a private road. Is that fair to say?
Defer to the county attorney, because I believe there wasn't sufficient information to determine whether that's officially private or...
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, and maybe for Ms. Sego, is we see documentations provided, but not enough to establish ownership. I think ownership is kind of important, so I'd like to hear more on that.
Lori Sego, County Attorney's Office, and I would also ask the applicant's attorney to correct me if I say anything incorrect. It has been a bit since I looked at this issue, but I reviewed deeds not only for this particular property, but a couple of the parcels to the south, looking for any dedications of right-of-way or looking for grants of access easement across this property. I did find one, and as Mr. Torres mentioned, that is one of the properties to the south that will be granted access through the gates so that they can continue to use Nevada Lane. In addition, at some time in the past, this property owner did go to court with a quiet title action, asking to quiet title, and I apologize, I can't remember if it's the western 15 feet or the eastern 15 feet of Nevada Lane within the boundaries of their property, and the court did grant that quiet title action, which granted this property owner all interests in that 15 feet of roadway. So anyone else who would have been claiming either didn't participate in the case or lost the judgment, but they now own that either east or west 15 feet completely without any other interests. So that's the information that I was provided. So in terms of ownership, I can't say whether or not the property owners to the south or others who use this access might have a right, an easement by prescription, which is another way of saying an easement through adverse possession. I don't have enough information, and it would not be appropriate for me to weigh in on that question. That is a question that a court could answer, and that is why staff has included a notation on this, if it is approved, that states that this variance of use approval, again, if granted, has no impact on those, whether or not those access rights exist or not. So if the application is approved, it's not extinguishing anyone's access rights if they in fact exist. We simply could not find enough evidence that they did. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Ms. Eagle, thank you. Do we have any further questions?
No, thank you, Ms. Segal. I was going to ask you about prescriptive easements, so thank you very much. The only other question I have, just, I'm sure it's all here, but I want to get straight in my mind. I take it this road has, for a long time, been used by the public. I take it, though.
It has been used. I don't know whether it's been used by the public or by a handful of residents as a private access easement.
Okay,
I don't have
no,
I don't have any information on
okay.
that.
Nobody's tried to shut it off before now.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Go ahead and continue,
I'll
Mr.
continue
Torres.
with my slides. A traffic study was submitted with this application. As indicated, they plan to gate this, and that would become more of a driveway access. If it was deemed a public road by a court, that would change the requirements that the county would have for that portion of roadway, or access, I should say. No significant impact to the surrounding roadways was identified in the traffic impact study. No offsite improvements were recommended. The applicant shall coordinate with the City of Colorado Springs in terms of any requirements that they have, such as an access permit to Adventure Way, since that is their roadway, and the property is subject to the road impact fee. Any questions regarding transportation?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson.
It seems to me that this roadway thing ought to be figured out first, shouldn't it? I mean, if we approve this, it doesn't take any access away from someone, but then it could change the whole development plan, right? If somebody would take it to court and get some definition in the future?
It would be a civil matter, and they would have to take it to the court for those things that happen. This is a variance of use stage. They will have to submit a site development plan where some of those details, if it has been already hashed out in terms of going to court, could be determined. If that was a public roadway, then they would have to build it to county standards.
Okay, and I'm assuming then the gates would have to go away and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah.
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
And that's the point of the notation, right? That basically says this, the variance of use decision has no bearing on the roadway. That's outside of our purview, and maybe something that's needs to be handled by somebody else. Mr. Byers.
Correct.
So I guess the property owner also owns Utah by the way all of this is being described. So if Nevada is private, they own that by the quiet title. They could quiet title Utah Lane, because that's on their property also. And then maybe the more curious one is California, which accessing east of Utah, that's private property with a private road, and they're just these little slivers. Theoretically, the person that owns that land could restrict access to those properties that come off of California.
I don't know the details of whether there's any other easements or anything like that.
I mean, it just
in
feels
terms
like
of-
there's a huge mess in regards to the roads. And I think I agree that the idea that the roads should be settled before the development moves forward makes a lot of sense.
I think instead of speculating, let's let the applicant address that. I'm sure that'll be part of the applicant's presentation, and we can get a better sense maybe, and then look at more specific questions following that, if that's okay. Mr. Whitney, did you?
Mr. Chair, sorry, just one point of clarification. It may be to Ms. Ego. Ma'am, you mentioned quiet title action to, I think you said half of Nevada Lane. And if I look at this graph that I think is up, so Nevada Lane running north and south, or at least top to bottom on this slide. So when we say half, are we talking half in distance or half in width?
Half in width.
Okay.
It's either the western 15 feet or the
Okay,
eastern 15 feet. I can't remember.
I thought that's what you said. So how odd. We may have a quiet title action that says you got 15 feet and you don't have the rest.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the quiet title action,
Yes, in
correct.
terms of quiet title. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Torres? Okay,
Thank
you're
you.
finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
The hearing notification for this property, 14 surrounding properties were notified of the upcoming hearing. The planning department did receive public comments from area neighbors. Some of those concerns which you'll most likely hear today, closing public access along Nevada Lane as a primary travel way to residential homes and businesses, drainage and detention impact on the current basin. And there was also a neighborhood meeting held for this particular application. These are the conditions of approval that are recommended by staff. I can leave these up for just a second, or I can read them into the record for you if you like, sir.
Nope, we've seen them in the packet. They're up here. Thank you.
And the applicant is Woodbend Utah LLC, and the representative is NES Inc. If we could have the applicant come up at this time, sir.
Yes, please.
Right. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Ann Odom with NES will be presenting on the Nevada-Utah Lane variance of use for RV storage and mini warehouse. I think first and foremost, we want to start with some of these access concerns that were raised. So I'll call forward our attorney, Sarah Frere, and she'll be able to kind of clarify some of these questions and loose ends we've discussed.
I'm sorry, could we get you to put the slides on full screen?
Oh, yeah.
Help us.
Thank you.
Makes the image a little bigger for us. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Sarah Frere. I am the attorney for the applicant. Thank you, Lori, for the summary regarding Nevada Lane. I understand that there's a lot of access questions and concerns from the neighbors, and I hope I can clearly and concisely address what the applicant has done. So from our research into the public record, Nevada Lane consists of approximately 30-ish feet wide, 15 feet-ish of which were owned by no one. When our research began, after the applicant asked me to look into this, we went back into the public record, basically to prior to the 1950s. What we were able to determine is that all of the property in question was owned by a family by the name of Hale for a very long time. The Hales sold off various parcels over the years. No one by the name of Hale has owned any of the properties since at least the 1960s. We were able to track down children of the Hales. They were all deceased. There was a Hale that was a rodeo star, and that was a very interesting thing that we found in our research, but did not help us with tracking down an actual owner of the property, someone to obtain a deed from. So what happened is there were just surveying errors, and that when the parcels around Nevada were created, they did not touch each other. And so this little 15-foot orphan strip did not have an owner. The assessor was not showing it as included in any of the parcels. It was just sort of out there. So what we did is we undertook the research with two different title companies. They spent quite a long time on it. We spent months and months on this research, and it was a very interesting undertaking. In the end, we determined that there was no one to obtain a deed from. There was no heir that could be ascertained, and there was no owner. And so what we did is a quiet title action. And we did that through the El Paso County District Court. And we named everyone that we could think of that possibly could have an interest in the property, that had a record interest in the property. That means that there was a deed in the public record. So we named the unknown heirs of the Hales, okay? Our research determined that one property owner did have a recorded easement across this portion of Nevada Lane. Their easement, because it is of record and recorded in the county records, was not affected by the quiet title lawsuit. Their easement remains preserved. Okay. The other portion of Nevada Lane, the westerly portion, the quiet title was on the easterly portion. The westerly portion was actually already owned by the applicant. Deeded ownership, record title ownership, they were paying taxes. We went back into the public record to determine what access easements may have been recorded over the other portion, the westerly portion of Nevada Lane. Again, we came up with a utility easement, and we came up with the same access easement that we found when we did the quiet title. There were no other recorded access easements, utility easements, anything other than what was disclosed in the quiet title over the westerly portion of Nevada Lane. We were surprised, quite honestly, because in our same research, we undertook to investigate California, which is also private, and Utah. Everyone and their brother has a recorded easement over California and Utah. We're not talking about those pieces of private easements. We are only talking about the portion of Nevada that is included in the site plan. Any questions?
Mr. Whitney.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. Well, just make sure I understand then. So the eastern portion is your client's by as a result of the quiet title action.
Correct.
And you're saying the western portion they already own.
Correct.
So they do own.
Correct.
They are the record owners of Nevada Lane.
Correct. They're also the record owners of half of Utah Lane, or 7 feet-ish, 7.5 feet-ish, but we're making, there are recorded access easements that impact their fee ownership, and we're not trying to disrupt any of that.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Byers,
do you know if there's recorded access easements on California? I know
Yes.
there's utility easements, but access also?
Yeah, there's, correct. There's many, many recorded access easements on California and on Utah.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Frayer? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, then I'll plan to start from the beginning. Again, Ann Odom for the record. I'm with NES. I'll kind of breeze through these first few slides. Justin covered it in his project, but just wanted to reiterate where we're at. We're about half a mile west of the Woodman and Mark Shuffle intersection, kind of in the northeast corner of this small county enclave. The project site is 3 parcels and just over 16 acres in size. The project is adjacent to city on 2 sides, the north and the east. So PDZ city residential zoning on the north, and then city zoning PDZ commercial and residential to the east. And then we've got A5 and RR5 to the west and south respectively. Zooming in, again, Justin covered this, so I'll try to be quick, but Parcel 1 has an existing variance of use for a contractor's equipment yard. Parcel 2 has an existing variance of use for outdoor storage of materials, and then Parcel 3 just exists as a single-family residence. And the idea is that those variances of use would remain in operation until a site development plan is approved for this site. Diving into the request, so we are asking for a variance of use to allow RV storage and mini warehouse in the RR5 zone district. On the screen is a conceptual site plan that we submitted as part of this request, and that really outlines kind of our intended layout and how the site will function. We've got 6 climate-controlled self-storage buildings on the east end of the site and approximately 433 RV and boat storage units with a mixture of enclosed, covered, and uncovered units. We're also proposing on-site private stormwater detention toward that southeast corner of the property. Traffic was analyzed for the proposal. Traffic memo was submitted based on the number of units we demonstrated on our site plan, a total of 1,152 units. With that number of units, it's estimated that about 207 average daily trips will be generated from this use. So that's 16 total trips in and out in the morning peak hour and 13 in the afternoon peak hour. Also, kind of reiterating what we've discussed at length is the only access for customers and employees that will be utilized is that Nevada Lane access where it intersects with Adventure Way. So that will prevent any of the customers or visitor traffic from the development from going through those unimproved county roadways in the neighborhood. I also wanted to point out in this exhibit here on the screen, that is a recently constructed realignment of Adventure Way. So it kind of jogs south, but then heads north to have a ride-in, ride-out access directly with Woodman Road. So that kind of helps improve the circulation in the area. So visitors can either turn left or turn right and vice versa to enter and exit the development. Public comment. 2 public comments were received during the initial review period of the project. One expressing the desire for a neighborhood meeting to discuss details of the project, as well as drainage concerns. So in response, the applicants did hold a neighborhood meeting on July 31st, where 10 people attended, representing 8 households, where they discussed just that, the intended use, impacts to other properties, and some of those drainage concerns. Got the criteria for approval before you. Obviously, you've had a chance to take a look at those, but I just wanted to mention that we're going to be kind of focusing on items 1 through 3 on the next few slides. Those are the more subjective review criteria. 4 through 9 are really more technical, and so we have already met those, and that's why we are here before you today. So zooming out, here's a map of some of the other higher density uses in the area. We've primarily highlighted the more higher density residential uses, but I'll dive into some of the commercial uses in the area as well. The reddish brown highlights are high density multifamily residential. The orange is medium density residential, and the bright red is typically the mini storage warehouse facilities in the area. Some uses not highlighted on the map but are of note right along the Woodman corridor include, hopefully you can see my cursor, but we've got a pretty large plant nursery here on the intersection of Woodman and Templeton Gap. That transitions over to high density residential. There are couple of commercial pad sites on the intersection of Black Forest and Woodman Road, and then some office and religious institution uses from there. And then we've also got a sizable religious institution directly west of the site, right next to us, and then a commercial driving school directly west. So just wanted to highlight kind of those higher intensity, some commercial, some high density residential uses right along the Woodman corridor, which is pretty in line with what we're proposing with this project, a little bit higher density or higher intensity of a use. Zooming into the enclave itself, wanted to give an exhibit of kind of how this enclave has evolved over the years. We've got a number of variances of use in the area. So these are typically kind of hybrid residential commercial, so lower intensity commercial uses like contractors, equipment yards, and nurseries in the area. The idea is our use is a little bit higher intensity commercial right along the Woodman corridor, adjacent to some of those other commercial uses that will ultimately provide a bit of a transition between high traffic principal arterial and these lower intensity commercial uses. The site is within a small enclave urban residential priority development area. These priority development areas are typically comprised of undeveloped, underutilized, large lot, single-family parcels that don't necessarily fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. And that's kind of what we have here. As I've demonstrated on previous slides, we've got those higher intensity commercial uses on that Woodman corridor that kind of provide a transition to the uses that come north and south from the Woodman corridor. And ultimately, the area has evolved to be a bit higher intensity residential from when this enclave was originally developed. We are also in a new development area of change, and these are typically characterized by undeveloped portions of the county that are adjacent to more built-out areas. That's exactly what we have here. We're bound by the city on two sides, and we are seeing a lot more commercial, higher intensity development along that Woodman corridor again. We are also included in the urban residential place type that does support a fair range of commercial uses as supporting land uses. And as Justin mentioned, we fit well within the commercial service supporting land use. Typically what we're looking at for compliance with this place type is functionality of the site, design, and access to infrastructure and services. So we have direct access to the City of Colorado Springs Roadway Adventure Way that has pretty easy access to Woodman Road, or they can travel left, and I believe it meets up with Black Forest to the west. So great access, necessary services, and ultimately will be designed in a way that complies with not only the use-specific standards, but is ultimately compatible with those surrounding uses. With that, we feel we have been able to meet those more subjective criteria as well as those technical criteria included in the variance of use, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson.
Did I understand that there's one area property owner is going to have access through this development, through that gate?
Yes, I believe it's 7215 Nevada Lane. I believe it's this single family home that'll be right south of the detention pond. So kind of, it's further, this one here. So south of California, actually. My apologies.
And why is that? Is it?
This was deeded. This has been deeded access to them for, I don't know the exact year that the deed was recorded, but it's been in place for a number of decades. So
onto the what is it? The north-south road there?
Correct. They'll have direct access. They will have access through the gates on Nevada Lane. Here, let me get to a better exhibit.
I thought we said no one had deeded access to that road.
Just the one.
Just the one?
Just the one, correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Odom? I don't see any. Thank you very much. And now we will move on for public comment on this. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor first? We always give two options. And then anyone who would like to speak in opposition. And while you're coming up, sir, again, please sign in and identify yourself. And do we have anybody that's listening in or indicated that they want to call in to address this item? And I didn't make it clear before in the other presentation, but we usually try to limit speakers. We don't want too much, don't want to drag this out too much, but I'll give you some latitude. We typically look at around three minutes or so. Again, we have seen the applications. We have seen the letters and emails and comments in opposition to this. But we definitely want to make sure that you have a chance to address us and make your concerns heard.
Yes, sir. Good morning. I'm Larry Driver, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I own the property right at the end of 7150 Nevada Lane. Been a resident for 30 years, and I've maintained the road. I've equipment, plowed it, kept it open, much to the approval of all the neighbors. It's been a long time, and the road, there's a 65-foot drop between Adventure Lane and the end of my property that we depend on for the water. But my key concern, my key question is, if you give my neighbor access, why can't I have access? I've used it more than anybody, and it's been a way of life for us. I don't see any reason to approve it if I never knew about the quiet claim titles. I've never even heard of it. I just think there's more data that needs to be presented before this variance can be approved, in my opinion. But those are my concerns, and I really, really hope that that's considered. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Driver. Other comments? That's fine, as long as you're on one of the sign-in sheets, that's,
My name is Kirby Thompson with Windwalker Ventures. My wife and I own, can I use the mouse here? My wife and I own 3 parcels to the south of this one. So we own this parcel here, which is kind of a little equestrian, and then we own, like you were saying, what word did you use, Mr. Byers? Orphan strips? Somebody else said orphan strips. Hale Acres is this entire area, and the Hale, I call it Hale Acres because my father-in-law called it Hale Acres. But all of it was just a train wreck in terms of surveying, property boundaries, roads. All of it has been a nightmare for everyone. So anytime a surveyor comes out to the property, it's just like everybody scratching their heads. But the primary property that we own is down here where Britton Nursery is located. My wife's family's lived there since 1978, and I've lived there since I married her and the family farm. I married the family farm in 98. And so down here on Adventure Way, Wyoming Lane, this is our road here. And then what happens is it becomes kind of a chicken wishbone here for Utah Lane accessing, which used to be Woodman Road here, and Nevada Lane accessing that way there too. We've used those roads like uninterrupted since I've been there, and those roads have been used since the 1950s. The difficulty with these properties is that a lot of the boundary lines between parcels goes right through the middle of a road. And so I own half of Wyoming Lane, my neighbor owns the other half of Wyoming Lane. So the problem that I see in this is that from the beginning, we feel as neighbors that the applicant actually applied litigious leverage to us from the beginning. And what I mean by that is we all received a letter, and I wish I would have included this in an attachment because you've probably already read the email that I sent. But they did send us notice letting us know that that quiet claim deed had been filed 2 years ago, but none of us were notified that it was being filed at the time that it was filed. So nobody knew about it. It kind of happened before. And then in this letter from them, from their attorney actually, it basically says that continued use by yourselves or guests or invitees will be considered a trespass and dealt with accordingly. So they notified us, we're going to close this, and if you keep driving on it, you're trespassing. I was confused because we've been using this for, like I said, decades. So I went and I looked at the public highways statutes with the state, and there is a provision in there that if a road or actually private land is being used and accessed uninterrupted and unobstructed and unobjected to for 20 years or more, that road would become a public highway according to state statute. It's been well over 20 years. And so in the interactions between Mr. Weeks and the attorney, they were saying, yes, if they can prove that, then it could be considered a public roadway and therefore an easement by prescription. And so what I'm saying is if you cut off this neighborhood, there are multiple businesses that have fleets of trucks and trailers and we're transporting products. And now that they've opened up a right in, right out access off the end of Adventure Way, we can go east. I use Nevada all the time. And a lot of times Utah is unpassable in weather. When it's raining, my trailers will slide off that road. I tell my drivers to use Nevada because it's passable in a storm. So if we get cut off from Nevada Lane, it's going to cause substantial implications, but I also believe that it's unlawful. I contacted the sheriff, and the sheriff said they cannot block that. That is a road by prescription, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, what, do I have to file suit to prove this? And the sheriff assured me that if they block this, that I just will call them and they will not be allowed to block that. So I agree with Mr. Carlson and Mr. Byers in that my opinion about this application is that the road problem needs to be solved before any approval is done, because it's going to cause other problems. If Nevada can be closed, who says Utah can't be closed? And the trickle-down effect goes beyond that, and pretty soon we're cut off as residents. So my appeal is, we've been using these roads for decades and decades as roads. The county posted signs on the roads saying that they're roads. So even though they are going across private lands, they are still throughways. And more than us has been using it. The public does use it to go to different events in the area. It is a road, and we're appealing that it should remain a road and not be blocked off.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Anyone else like to speak on this item? Thank you. Public comment is closed, and we will now turn to the commissioners for questions for the applicant or for the, actually, I'll let the applicant come back before I do that. I'll let the applicant have an opportunity to address any of those concerns or make any final comments they would choose. See Ms. Freyer approaching.
I certainly empathize with the neighbors. However, there is no legal basis to deny this application based on the concerns over Nevada Lane. Nevada Lane in the public record is a private easement. I did correspond with Mr. Kirby regarding his concerns on the public highway statute. We can agree to disagree what it says and whether it creates a public right. In the record as it exists today and what is before the Planning Commission, the only private right to use Nevada Lane are with the record easement holder, that is the Sedlak family, and my client, which is the fee title owner of Nevada Lane. If the opposing parties here today wish to pursue what they feel are their rights, they absolutely can do that in a court of law. We did nothing sneaky. We did nothing untoward. We followed the rules as they exist. Our quiet title went through El Paso County District Court. It was published in the newspaper as required. The other portion of Nevada Lane is deeded to my client, subject only to the one record easement. I understand that the neighborhood has existed as it's existed for a very long time. And if a private citizen wishes to raise a claim of a prescriptive easement, there are rules for them to follow. That has not happened. I don't want to minimize the concerns of the neighbors, but I do think they misunderstand the actual legal landscape and what exists today in the public record. The other thing that I want to make sure the commission, I know you're aware of this and I want to just raise it, is we are not cutting off anyone's access. That is illegal and is protected by the Colorado Constitution. There is good alternative access that is protected by recorded easements. My client is not disputing any of that. They are not making claims to anything other than the portion, not all of it, but the portion of Nevada Lane that they own. Answer any other questions?
Mr. Carlson?
Chair. So what is your interpretation then of that Colorado statute of prescriptive access or whatever it was?
Sure. So to establish a prescriptive easement, the person that wants to make that claim has to go to court to establish it so it's recognized in the public record. That has not happened. If the neighbors feel that they wish to pursue that, the application accounts for that. And the planning staff has made a note that if that happens, and if a prescriptive easement is established as a matter of right by going through the process in district court, that of course the application and the project would be subject to a valid court order.
And so your client's willing to take that risk that we'll develop it how we'd like to, and in the future, somebody may come in and make us change it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Ma'am, can you remind me, when was the quiet title action? Excuse me, yeah, the quiet title action?
It began in 2021, and our order was recorded in May of 2022.
And just to follow up on Mr. Carlson's question, so at this point, the proposal is that north and south ends of Nevada Lane that you believe your client owns, the record owner, would be gated off.
Correct.
If a prescriptive easement were to be found and a court order so entered, would the project change other than just taking down the gates, or would you have to do something else?
So it's my understanding that the actual current on-the-ground easement for Nevada Lane is not changing because we do have one property owner that has
Right.
an easement. We're simply going to put up gates and provide that property owner with keys to the gates or a gate opener, however that's done. Okay. If a neighbor were to establish a prescriptive easement, I imagine, depending on that court order, we would have to treat them the same way.
Thank you.
Mr. Moraes, do you still have a question?
This is a little bit different. I'm just looking at our bylaws. I think I want advice from our attorney in executive session real quick before we make any decision on this that may go further down the road. So I move to go to executive session.
Can I guess we have a motion, so I have to let you do that. I was going to say, maybe we could listen to the rest of the, any more rebuttal from the applicant, and then before we have,
Okay,
before we go into
I'll
deliberation.
take my motion back. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll remove my motion off.
Thank you. But good idea. Any other direct questions from Ms. Freyer? Mr. Smith, go ahead.
If this went to court and it was approved as a regular roadway, I'm confused. You're saying that those people that petitioned for it to become a regular roadway would have access to it, but people transitioning through the area to go to further businesses, they wouldn't have access through there. So it wouldn't be a regular roadway.
I'm not entirely sure that we're that I'm following the question. It's my understanding that there may be neighbors who feel they have a prescriptive easement, which is different than a public roadway. I don't think anyone's proposing the county taking Nevada under its wing and maintaining it and everything else.
I got the impression that's what we were asking, but it is or it isn't. It is. That is what they're proposing, is that be a regular roadway.
Okay, well, that would be a very different kind of thing,
And
right?
I think that's the kind of question we'll discuss here in a few minutes.
Okay.
But good question. Mr. Whitney.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just for the record. So your understanding, I'm not holding you to it at this point because you may not have done the research, but your understanding is that if I, as one of those citizens who believes they have a prescriptive easement. If I get one, then you'll give me a key. You won't give a key to the city of Colorado Springs, you'll give me a key.
Correct.
And if somebody else wants to say they have then they're going to have to get a prescriptive easement, and then you'll give them a key.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes. And the criteria for establishing a prescriptive easement is quite specific, and it is not something that the general public would be able to establish.
Mr. Carlson?
I think I used the wrong terminology in the beginning. I think prescriptive easement is one thing, but the last gentleman to speak talked about the use of a public roadway for more than 20 years by the area, and that becomes, some Colorado statute says that becomes a public road.
Right.
So I'm asking you that question of what's you said you agreed to disagree on the interpretation of that. I'm asking what yours is.
Could I, so I wrote a letter to Mr. Kirby. Could I submit that to the record in response to his assertion that it was a public?
Sure.
I can either read it or I can provide it to you, whatever.
If you'd read it to start with, I'd like that.
Yeah, I think we'd like to hear the answer, and then definitely needs to be in the record.
Okay. This is dated June 24th, 2024. Mr. Thompson, I am writing in response to your letter dated June 6, 2024, and your letter sent June 20th, 2024. While I appreciate you reaching out with your concerns after receiving the notice dated May 29th, 2024, sent on behalf of Woodman Utah LLC, I strongly encourage you to consult with an attorney. Your assertions regarding the easement commonly known as Nevada Lane being a public highway are simply not correct. Colorado is clear that mere use without intent to dedicate and without evidence by which intent to dedicate may be inferred is insufficient to create a public highway. And there's many cases, I list them in the letter. Please also refer to the El Paso County Engineering Criteria Manual, Chapter 4, Section 4.4 regarding mailbox location, and Section 8.64 regarding requirements for acceptance of a public road. And then the letter goes on to offer to meet and have a neighborhood meeting. But there are specific criteria for establishing a public highway, and in this case, some of those criteria are simply not there. I understand that is a question of fact, but in my estimation and in our research, those criteria simply were not met. It's not, you just can't use something for 20 years and it becomes a public highway. That's not what the law says.
Okay, let's open for some yeah, if you would make sure that gets into the record to the clerk at the end, please, Ms. Mays. And I would, if we have any other questions on other aspects of this than the Nevada Lane access issue, let's get a chance to ask the applicant or staff those questions. Then we will go and have an executive session and then come back and wrap it up. Is that fair to everyone? Even if it's not on the chair, so I'm going to do it anyway. Any other questions? Any questions on any other aspects of this for Mr. Kilgore or Ms. Odom? Okay, then I guess the only question I have is we need a motion to go into executive session, I believe.
May I suggest a motion, please, to comply with state statute? Thank you. My proposed motion would be that the Planning Commission go into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B, as in boy, conferences with an attorney for the local public body for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions. And it's my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the subject matter, because we do have to identify the subject matter, would be legal questions related to the status of Nevada Lane as an access.
I won't dare to repeat that, but
No, but
You can-
hold
yeah.
on, let's hear from Mr. Kilgore. We have the motion that we're probably going to hear in a minute, but do you have something else before then?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Staff would like to request a 10-minute break before said executive session.
Sorry to interrupt. Agreed. We need to get through the motion first, but then we'll need a break to figure out where and how we're going to hold that.
Right. Okay, fair enough. So, Mr. Moraes,
I move in accordance with what Ms. Seego said.
thank you. The record will reflect that. We have a second. We have a second from Mr. Whitney. Do we need a roll call vote or
I think it's
just?
two-thirds.
Yes, we do need a roll call vote. The motion does need to pass by a 2/3 majority in order to pass.
Okay, let's start at the far end. Mr. Moraes?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Whitney?
Aye.
Ms. Jack?
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge?
Nay.
Mr. Carlson?
Aye.
Mr. Shipples?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And I guess I have to vote aye because I said it would be a good idea earlier. So we will, not right now. Oh, that would be a good, I guess for the record, let's have Mr. Trowbridge's reason for voting no. And then we'll start talking about logistics and all of that. Do you have any?
I voted no because I don't believe that this question is pertinent or hits on any aspect of the criteria we're supposed to consider.
Thank you.
I agree with you. Thank you. Thanks for putting that in the record. And now, so we will move to executive session. We'll take a break on the way in and figure that out. And can we just go back here?
We'll need to figure that out. It needs to be recorded, so we have to figure out how that's going to happen.
Okay. Well, we up here will take a break until we're told what we do next. Those in the audience, bear with us, and we will come back again. Yeah.
It's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah. Can we just ask the audience to go outside?